Because of how I approach these YouTube videos and how much time it takes to make these reviews and experiences, I don't do a lot of these kinds of videos. I just don't make time for covering third-party products on the cameras that I'm using. But the team at Thypoch, they reached out. They let me know that they have an early sample of their new Simera 50mm F1.4 lens. And after a few back and forths, I decided, well, why not? Let's talk about this lens. A few of you have asked me about these lenses and how they perform. I've never had any previous experience with them, but this would be a great opportunity to get an introduction. The Simera is their competitor to these F1.4 lenses, right? And the biggest question here is, how does it compare to the modern F1.4 summilux? Do you want the short answer or do you want the long answer? Before I talk about the results, let's quickly go over the specs of this lens. Obviously, it's a 50mm lens made for the M mount, and I believe that there are some other mounts that are going to be available as well. But, you know, the bread and butter is getting something like this for your M rangefinder solution. There is also close focus capabilities where you can use this lens and focus as close as 45 centimeters from your subject. You manually focus with this lens and you no longer have a lock at infinity. You can just roll through that entire range seamlessly. There's also an aperture D-click option, right? So if you plan on using this for some video functions, you can have this turned on and just smoothly navigate that aperture range. There's 14 aperture blades in this lens, and the Thypoch is putting a lot into the glass. There's 8 elements in 6 groups with spherical elements and other specialty elements as well. It has an aluminum build. It's about just under 290 grams, and it's gonna retail for $700 US. A very competitive offering. I didn't get to travel with this lens, but I did get to use it across several environments. And in my time with it, you know, you have something that's really versatile, right? You go as wide as f1.4, but you can stop it down and get some really clean results. What did I like about this lens? I'll echo something I mentioned earlier, that infinity lock, that's gone. So you can go from close focus to infinity without any weird obstructions in the way. I like the new hood design here where you can screw on a hood or take it off entirely. I just like that approach better than an integrated hood. Being able to de-click that aperture was a little bit useful for some of the things that we were shooting, and close focus, that's great to have as well. Now, when you go under 0.7 meters, you'll have to use the live view on the back of the camera to focus, but it's just something that gives you more storytelling options with this lens. Some of the things that I didn't like about the lens, the distance scale, it's cool, it's interesting, but it's pretty much unusable. It is really neat how this thing, you know, it pops red as you kind of open up the range in which that you can get focus, but you really can't read it. It's not something that you can look to and have a clear understanding of the range that you're going to be focusing in. When you mount this lens on your camera, there's no EXIF data, so the camera doesn't know what lens you're using. You can kind of fake it, but you know, you're not going to get a clean reading like if you were swapping with other lenses that are native to the M mount. And something that just felt a little strange to me, I don't think it's a major issue, but when you're using that aperture ring and you're clicking through, it moves between third stop and then, you know, half stop increments. And that's just an odd thing to consider, that even without looking at the lens, you might not know exactly how and which aperture you're at. But let's get to the image quality. The short answer is that there is a difference between this lens and the modern summilux lens, right? When you're using a modern summilux lens, I found that you were just getting a cleaner result, and the characteristics of that summilux, where there is that non-linear drop-off in sharpness and contrast, allows you to get these results that have a little bit more pop to them, a little bit more dreaminess to them without feeling too ethereal, right? Whereas the Simera, it gives you a really good result. You can take these photos and a lot of people are going to be impressed with them if you compose them properly. It's just something that if you were looking side by side and you're a photographer, you will see the difference. The other thing to consider with the modern summilux is that it has these apochromatic properties. So when you're shooting certain things, it just controls chromatic aberration a lot better. It controls and produces these images, I should say, with better micro contrast. And again, we are getting into something that can really, you know, get out of hand if you focus on these things too much. And this is all to say that what Thypoch is doing with the Simera is giving incredible value, right? Everyone's Leica journey is going to be different. And for a lot of people, the rangefinder, it is a dream camera they save up for, and they get this thing and they want that experience of shooting Leica. Here's the thing, if you're asking me, to fulfill that experience, you should research and get Leica glass. You should get these optical contraptions, these magical little things to complete that experience and find something that allows you to tell the story that you're looking to tell. But you don't have to do it right away. And for a lot of people, you can't do it right away. So I see the value of what Thypoch is doing, especially with their Simera option. This is not a competitor to the summilux as much as some people might want you to believe. This is not something that you buy and suddenly you're like, oh, the summilux doesn't make sense. I got this thing. I don't even need to look at that thing anymore. And what a waste of money. That's kind of a stupid argument, right? And it does more harm to the imaging space than I would care to support. The value here is that there are more products coming into the M family, into the M ecosystem, more competition, more innovation, so that you have these entry points that allow people to practice photography sooner, right? If you save up a ton of money and you find an M11 or you buy a used M10 or some sort of monochrome device, you get that thing. And now there's an affordable 50mm F1.4 option that you can start shooting with that you might spend, $800 US on and spend another chunk of money on a trip somewhere to the world and focus on the photography, focus on getting better with your photography and really putting in those reps. Is this a lens that I would buy? No, I'm not the target customer for a lens like this. But if I were to jump back, 5-6 years, right? And I sort of had the revelation of just getting an M system sooner rather than waiting for it, I would be the target customer for a lens like this. This is where I would start to cut my teeth before I knew what kind of stories I was trying to tell. And I think that's the hard thing to dismiss with Thypoch and what they're doing. They're just giving a really high value to price ratio with their Simera lineup. As the title would suggest, this is not a review. This is me just sharing my thoughts on this lens, sharing a few images and what I think as a Leica photographer that owns multiple modern Leica lenses. What I will say though, is that if you're someone that is really early in your journey, you're more of a hobbyist, and you figured out that you want to get into the M system sooner rather than later because that's the experience that speaks to your creativity, the Simera lineup is something that you might look at as your starting point, right? Where you might have that holy grail like a lens that you're aiming toward, that you're saving up for, but you've exhausted most of your funds to get this M camera first. Well, with Thypoch, with the Simera, you have something that's competitive that'll allow you to get those reps in, to really cut your teeth, to explore your creativity, and not make too much of a commitment early on, right? Before you've sort of figured out what kind of photographer you are. If you're asking me, all roads eventually lead to some sort of M lens, right? Something in this extensive catalog across the decades that you will aim toward. It's just nice to have something that you can use while you wait for that to happen. Now, if you're still watching, there's something I want to hear from you. I always love to hear what you guys think about a product to sort of add this nice tail to the videos that I'm making. So number one, let me know where you're watching from. So drop a flag as usual where you're watching from and let me know what you think about this lens. But I'd also love to know, what was your first M lens? What was the first lens you got? Maybe some of you had the fortune to get a Leica M lens right away. Maybe some of you started with something else before you got an M lens. Maybe some of you are still early in that journey. Whatever it may be, let me know in the comments down below. As always, my name is Gajan. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. I should also say, I gotta give a shout out to my friend Kevin Fickling, who has been gracious enough to give me his workshop here to record these voiceovers on a real last minute, man. We're trying to squeeze as much out of this day as possible. And if you haven't already, be sure to follow Kevin's channel as well, where he shares a photography video every once in a while. But when he does, they are incredible to watch, but especially check out his Instagram channels, right? Both his personal Instagram, where he shares his photography, and his professional one, where he's talking about some of the bags that he's making, and really high-end stuff all done in this workshop right here. So again, my shout out to Kevin. Thank you so much for letting us use your workshop. He's actually in the other room waiting for us to finish. which means that if I keep talking, he doesn't get to use the space and make stuff. So there's probably a customer watching these videos not getting their bag as early as they could because I'm here doing a voiceover. So I think I should wrap this video up.